Well, that controversial and likely illegal US raid to remove Nicolas Maduro has left world leaders wondering which country or territory is likely to be Donald Trump's next target. The US president has said he wants to take back the Panama Canal, make Greenland part of the US, and address Cuba.
A military raid and a foreign leader in handcuffs. Is this Donald Trump's new normal, and who could be his next target? The US actions in Venezuela have sent a strong message about Trump's priorities in this part of the world.
He thinks that he should be the boss of the Western Hemisphere neighborhood. Intervention in the Western Hemisphere is sort of almost doctrinally inscribed in the new national security strategy that the Trump administration recently released.
Shortly after Nicolas Maduro's capture, Trump threatened Cuba.
Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now.
The island nation is under a near-total US trade embargo and has had strained relations with the US for decades. Trump's new threats sparked an immediate angry response in Havana.
Down with imperialism! This is not your backyard or disputed territory. We do not accept or recognize the Monroe Doctrine.
The Monroe Doctrine was originally formulated 200 years ago as a US warning to European colonial powers against intervening in the Americas. Before World War II, some US presidents also used it to justify US interventions in the region. Donald Trump seems to be using it in a similar way. The US attack on Venezuela was illegal under international law. Given what's happened, some regional leaders are walking a tightrope.
If there are some world leaders who are nervous today, one of them has to be José Raúl Mulino in Panama. Let's face it, he was, quite frankly, the first guy up on the firing line when President Trump took office and surprised everybody with his statement that we're going to take the canal back.
Trump has also stated repeatedly his desire to acquire Greenland, a self-governing territory that's part of Denmark. Now his past threats are gaining a new urgency.
We need Greenland for national security. One way or the other, we're going to get it.
This picture of Greenland wrapped in the US flag was posted by the wife of one of Trump's close aides after the Venezuela raid with the caption, "Soon." By claiming special rights over sovereign nations in the Western Hemisphere, Trump's actions could have a ripple effect across the world. Russia and China have sharply condemned the US raid and Maduro's capture. Yet some experts see Trump's moves as following their own leaders' playbooks.
Vladimir Putin, I think that he very quietly sat there and said, good move. That means he's not going to say much about me in Ukraine. I think that in Beijing, Xi Jinping, who gave a speech the day before about the ultimate unity of Taiwan and mainland China, probably sat back and said, oh, look at that. Nice move, Don.
Well, let's explore some of those issues with Jesus Renzullo from the German Institute for Global and Area Studies. Welcome to DW. And let's start with Russia and China. How is this Trump action likely to affect their connections with and interests in Venezuela?
Thank you for having me. Well, it's going to affect them in really big ways. One of the first demands of Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, was for Venezuela, for Caracas, to cut ties with the main rivals of the United States. That includes Iran, Russia, to some extent Beijing, and of course Cuba. While Russia might get the harder end of the stick, as the most cooperation with Caracas is military, so in weapons and intelligence and security, Beijing cooperation with Caracas is mainly economic. And Donald Trump has signaled that they are willing to allow Beijing to keep receiving barrels of oil and maybe probably also getting some level of debt restructuring with Caracas.
Okay, so there are exceptions to be made. It's not absolute. Now, of course, we're all wondering who's going to be next. Cuba, Mexico, Colombia, even NATO ally Denmark over Greenland. Which of these leaders should be most nervous?
That is the question of the $100 million, I guess. I would argue that the closest scenario that to Caracas or to Venezuela is a Cuban scenario. It's a government that is considered a dictatorship. that is also heavily rival to the United States, and therefore it is likely to be the next one to get extreme pressure from Washington, because Secretary Marco Rubio has a personal stake on the topic of Cuba. Meanwhile, Mexico and Colombia are more likely to be pressured economically and diplomatically in a way that forces them to get concessions to Washington.
So what are we looking at then? We keep hearing about this Monroe Doctrine, and it does seem clear that Donald Trump is imposing America's will on its backyard. How does that doctrine, how does that change the power dynamic in the region?
Well, it basically reinstates, to some extent, the Roosevelt corollary of the Monroe Doctrine, the idea that the United States has the capacity and the right to intervene in governments and in the region, in the Latin American region, as long as they decide that they are not behaving in the topic of Roosevelt, or in the times of Roosevelt, was a civilized nation. In the case of Donald Trump, the spin of the Monroe Doctrine is that it's more of giving the United States the deferential treatment that America believes they deserve in the region as the hegemon of the zone.
Right. America gets to do what it's like. The rest of the world says, please don't hurt us. And so long as we don't challenge them, then that's the new status quo. Let's talk about what's likely to be happening in Venezuela, because we've seen Delcy Rodriguez, the acting president. We've seen her offering to work with the United States, despite having been quite scathing in the initial stages of this invasion, of this coup. Do you have any insight into what's likely to be going on behind the scenes between her government and Washington?
Well, Delcy Rodriguez was the logical pick from Washington to govern Venezuela in this transition period, because he believes that, first, they were the diplomatic arm of the government, the Rodriguez brothers. They have knowledge and control over the clique of the political elite, and they know how to negotiate internally. Now, Delcy will keep being diplomatically scathing and diplomatically rivalry against the United States, but that doesn't mean that they will not act however Washington asks, in diplomatic sense, in economic sense. Now, dismantling the security elite in Venezuela is going to be way more difficult and way harder for Delcy to agree with. But the thing is that the government of Venezuela, and this is before Delcy, even with Maduro, is transactional by nature. Ideology is not a big deal, more than in the narrative sense.
Good talking to you. Thank you for joining us. Jesus Renzullo from the German Institute for Global and Area Studies.
Thank you.